Welcome to Business Law course. This is Sujana speaking. In this occasion, we will discuss about the topic intellectual property law. Intellectual property is one kind of property that is also used in the activity of business. In this part, we will focus on the concept and the definition of intellectual property. Because this course is talking about business law, so intellectual property is only one of the part of business law. Thus, we're not going to talk about all aspects, we will only discuss about the main aspect. In this course, we're not going to discuss until the history or maybe the detail of each of the classification of intellectual property. Hence, I suggest you to find additional resources to help you to understand about this topic better, including regarding the history and the more detail of its classification of the intellectual property. You could find many references to help you to understand better about intellectual property law in Indonesia, and here is one of them. This is my own book. It's kind of promotion, yeah. It's called Hukum Hak Kekayaan Intelektual di Indonesia, Intellectual Property Rights Law in Indonesia. This book is very basic because it was written for students, so the language in that book is also very basic. It's all delivering you the core idea of what is intellectual property, so there is no too specific discussion in this book. It's all general. And also you can find other books including international books, but international books won't be focused on Indonesian point of view. So because this course is focused on Indonesian business law, I hope you could find some books of intellectual property law in Indonesia. Well, now, what is intellectual property? Intellectual property is constructed by two words, intellectual and property. I will start with the word property first to make it easier for us to understand this concept. You might be familiar with the word property, since everybody actually has a property. But what is property? In the point of view of most people, maybe when talking about property, the things that will cross on their mind is something expensive like car, house, motorcycle. They would call it property. Well, that is true in one side, but talking about property is not only limited to those kinds of goods, because property itself is a wide and broad concept. When we talk about property, we're talking about everything that we own. When I have a pen, that's my property. When I have a book, that's my property. Why? Because that is something that economically benefit for me. That is something that I can use, but also simultaneously I can sell it, I can list it. So it belongs to me. It's my wealth. So everything that belongs to me that can be assessed financially and also valuable for someone, so that is their property. So now take a look at yourself. You might have some property on you. It could be your laptop, your smartphone. So property is a goods. In the perspective of law, property, or in Indonesia, we call it kekayaan. Kekayaan is everything that is worth it for us. In Indonesian legal concept, it's a legal object. We call it a legal object. Legal object is everything that is that would be beneficial for the legal subject. It could be in many forms. And in Indonesian civil law, we would recognize several classification of object. Some object is in the form of tangible object, so we can see it through our eyes. Just like the car, the motorcycle, the land, it's all seen by the eyes, so it's tangible object. But there is another object which is intangible. We cannot see the real form of the object, but we realize the existence of the object. The example of this kind of object is rights. Right of many things. Everything that you consider as a right, that is also a property, but it is intangible. It's just like the right of voting. You cannot see the right of voting, right? But you know the existence of this right. So that is property. So intellectual property is also a kind of goods. Even though previously I mentioned you about the classification of goods, there are so many other classifications. Tangible, intangible, movable, immovable. Movable means the object is easy to be moved. Immovable means it's hard to be moved, or based on its purposes it's not to be moved. And also some objects called movable because the law consider them as movable and immovable goods. But I'll only tell you the brief of it. But the point is, when we talk about intellectual property, we have to know that it is a property. It is something that valuable, economically worth it. So that's the word's property. And then now intellectual. Intellectual here means this property is made using the capacity of someone's intellectuality. So the persons or the subject is using his mind, his time, his sacrifice, even the money to create something using the intellectual capability. And then this kind of effort makes a certain goods that could be used by many people, even in industry, so it's applicable. So it's called intellectual property. But not everything is intellectual property, even though the realization would be based on intellectual property. Let's say that an architecture design, so the architect make this design using his capability of intellectuality. So he made it, he created, he designed it. He designed the design of the building or of an apartment, for example. So the design is intellectual effort. But of course, this design would only be truly realized when it's created in a real form of apartment. So who make the apartment? Of course not the architect make the apartment directly. It could be the handyman, it could be the workers, but it doesn't mean the workers could say because it's built because of me, it's my intellectual property. No, because the design itself, the guidance for them to create the building is from the design from the architect, so that design is intellectual property. As well as when you create a song, so that song is your intellectual capability. You make that song is a property because it's economically benefit for you. But of course sometimes you have some some limitation in producing a song, so you could help some company or some engineer to help you to create the song. Then the song is made, well heard, very good, but it doesn't gives authority for the engineer or the recording company to claim the song as their intellectual property. It's your intellectual property because the song is made by you, but they help you to realize it. So that's what makes the difference between intellectual property and the other property. And also, like when we talk about house, car, that's a property, but that's not the intellectual property because the car itself, it's a real form of a car, but the design, it could be the intellectual property. But when the design already transformed into a real form, the real form is not intellectual property anymore, but it's just property. It's tangible, just like a book. You write the book, the idea of the book is intellectual property because it's made using your intellectual property. But when it is printed, so the printed version of the book or even the PDF, as long as it's the implementation of the idea of the book, so it's in the form of book, whether it is hardcover or a hard file or soft file. The book itself, it is a tangible goods, but behind the tangible goods there is idea. This idea is non-tangible or intangible goods, which is intellectual property. For example, you go to the bookstore and then you find, for example, the book that the author is me, so you have a book now. So you got a book from a bookstore, so you choose the book, you bring it to the cashier, you buy it. So now you have a book, right? A printed book. So now whose book is this? Of course you can say this is my book, right? The printed one is your book. But would it give you an authority to claim that the idea of the book is yours? No. Because in the beginning I said that the book that you bought is written by me. So in the book you will find my name as the author. So you have the printed book, you own the tangible goods in the form of book. You can sell the book again, right, to the other people as a second-hand book, because that's your property. The book is your property. But the idea of book, the copyright of the book is mine. So you cannot use what I've written in the book and then you type it again and then you try to sell it using your name. You cannot do that because the idea is mine, the copyright is mine. But the book itself, the printed book, is yours. Or just like in this semester, some of you have bought my book, Business Law of Indonesia, right? So the book is yours. If you want to give it to your friend, give it. If you want to let your parents read it, you can let them to read it because it's your book. The book itself, I mean the real form of the book, but it doesn't mean that you can copy the book and sell it to the others, because that means you're selling the idea, the content. The content is not yours, but the printed book that you buy is yours. So that is the difference between intellectual property and non-intellectual property, or just property. So what is intellectual property? It is a property, something that worth it economically, and it's made by the capability or capacity of someone's intellectuality. So that could be in the form of copyright or other things that is the creation of intellectuality capacity. Well, at the next parts we will discuss classification of intellectual property that admitted by Indonesian law. So I suggest you to read the related regulation about intellectual property in Indonesia. Thank you.